General Hospital spoilers tease that Drew Kane's mind is unraveling and no one is prepared for the storm he's about to unleash. Not even Willow, who will pay the ultimate price in a moment of unthinkable sacrifice. The corridors of General Hospital had always felt like home to Elizabeth Weber. After all these years, the sterile white walls and low hum of fluorescent lighting no longer felt cold. They were part of her rhythm, her breath. The place held her heartbreaks, her triumphs, her memories. It held the weight of the lives she'd tried to save and the ones she'd lost anyway. But lately, something had shifted. A new kind of tension gripped the hospital like a silent current humming just beneath the surface. And at the center of it was Drew. Drew Kane had always been a gentle force, a presence that could be relied upon. He wasn't flashy like Jason or brash like Sonny. He was steady, thoughtful. And after everything he'd endured, abduction, experimentation, memory tampering, he'd emerged resilient. Or so everyone had thought. But the Drew that now wandered the halls of General Hospital was not the same man Liz remembered. His footsteps no longer echoed with purpose but with unease. His once steady voice had become clipped, restless. His eyes, once clear and grounded, were haunted. It had started small, missed meetings, forgotten conversations, outbursts that felt disproportionate. Then came the paranoia. Liz had tried to talk to him, gently at first, then with growing concern. But Drew had only recoiled further into himself, becoming volatile and distant. He'd confided in no one. And now, everyone was afraid to admit the truth. Liz sat in the staff lounge, tapping her pen against a half-filled patient chart, trying to focus. But her thoughts kept drifting back to the last time she'd seen Drew, 2 nights ago. He'd shown up unannounced at her door, disheveled, eyes red-rimmed, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles had turned white. He hadn't said much. Just stared at her as though searching for something only he could see. He'd told her not to trust anyone. That someone was watching. That she had betrayed him. And then he had left. Liz had barely slept since. She tried to rationalize it. PTSD. Stress. Maybe a delayed reaction to everything he had been through. But something deeper, darker, pulsed beneath the surface of Drew's breakdown. Something she couldn't name. And worse, she had the gut-wrenching feeling that time was running out. Willow Tate walked through the pediatric wing with a clipboard pressed against her chest, her heart still sore from the last conversation she'd had with Michael that morning. Their relationship had been hanging by threads since the incident with Drew or whatever had really happened. And though she tried to stay strong for Wiley, for herself, there were days when the grief threatened to swallow her whole. Still, she kept moving. Because that was what she did. Because if she stopped, the silence might crush her. She caught sight of Liz near the elevators and offered her a tired smile. Liz returned it weakly, but Willow could see the tension clinging to her like static. She crossed the hallway toward her. "Hey," Willow said softly. "You okay?" Liz hesitated. "I'm not sure." Willow's brow furrowed. "Is it Drew?" Liz nodded, rubbing her arms as if cold. "I think he's unraveling. And I don't know what to do." Willow glanced down the hallway, a flicker of concern darting through her expression. "Have you told anyone?" "Jason's gone," Liz whispered. "Anna's tied up with WSB affairs. Finn, he's not in a place to deal with this right now. And I don't want to escalate it unless I'm sure." "You think he's dangerous?" Willow asked. Liz didn't answer right away. "Yes," she said finally. "I do." That night, the hospital was quieter than usual. A power outage in one of the wings had forced half the staff to redirect patients, and most of the floor Liz was working on had gone dark. Emergency lights glowed faintly against the walls, painting everything in long shadows and sterile red hues. Liz stayed late, charting, hoping distraction would calm her nerves. She was the only one left on the floor, save for a couple of overnight techs down the hall. She didn't hear the footsteps at first. But she felt them. A strange change in the air. A shift in presence. When she looked up from the nurse's station, Drew was standing across from her. He looked different. Not just tired. Not just broken. He looked lost. His clothes were soaked from the rain, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes unfocused but wild. "Drew," Liz said carefully. "You shouldn't be here. Not like this." He didn't speak. Just took a step closer. Liz stood slowly, setting her chart down, trying not to alarm him. "Talk to me," she said gently. "What's going on?" "I remembered something," he whispered. His voice was shaking. "I remembered what they did to me. What they made me do. And I remembered you." Liz's stomach dropped. "They told me you were in on it," Drew continued. "That you helped. That you knew. You smiled at me while they put the wires in my head." "That's not true," Liz said immediately, stepping back. "You know me, Drew. You know who I am." "You think I do," he said, eyes narrowing. There was madness in him now, untamed, sharp. He lunged. Liz turned and ran. The hallway exploded into chaos. Liz sprinted down the corridor, ducking into the stairwell, her lungs burning. Behind her, Drew's footsteps slammed against the tile floor like thunder. She needed to get to security. She needed to find someone. She made it 2 flights down before he caught up. He grabbed her shoulder, spinning her around with brute force, slamming her back against the wall. Her head cracked against the concrete, and stars exploded in her vision. "Why did you betray me?" he growled. "Why?" "I didn't," she gasped, fighting to breathe. "Please, Drew, this isn't you." "You don't know me," he roared. His hands wrapped around her neck. Willow had stayed later than planned. She'd returned to the pediatric floor to retrieve a forgotten binder, and on her way out, she'd taken the stairs instead of the elevator. She heard the shouting. And then she heard Liz scream. She didn't think. Didn't hesitate. She ran. She found them in the stairwell. Liz pinned against the wall, Drew's hands tightening around her throat, his face contorted with fury. "Drew!" Willow cried. "Stop!" He froze. Turned. For a heartbeat, recognition flickered in his eyes. Then nothing. He shoved Liz aside and turned to Willow. "You lied to me, too," he whispered. "All of you. Every one of you." "No one lied to you," Willow said, hands raised, voice calm but firm. "We care about you. We want to help you." "You don't understand," he said. "I was supposed to wake up. But I'm still dreaming. And none of you are real." He stepped forward. Willow didn't flinch. "I'm real," she said softly. "Liz is real. Scout is real. Michael. Wiley. We're all real, Drew. You just need to see it." He hesitated. For one terrible second, Willow thought it had worked. But then his body twitched. His fingers clenched. And he lunged for Liz again. Willow didn't think. She threw herself between them. There was a sickening crack. And everything went still. Willow hit the floor with a thud, her body crumpling over Liz's. Blood pooled quickly. Liz screamed. Drew staggered back, blinking, as though waking from a nightmare. "No," he said, voice breaking. "No, no, no." He dropped to his knees beside Willow, shaking her shoulders, trying to wake her. "I didn't mean to," he sobbed. "I didn't mean." But it was too late. Willow's eyes stared up at the ceiling, unmoving. The emergency lights flickered red against the walls. And somewhere, deep in the hospital, an alarm began to sound. Understood. Here is part 2 of your General Hospital dramatic retelling, continuing seamlessly from the devastating events of part 1. This section maintains the emotional intensity, explores the fallout of Willow's sacrifice, and dives deeper into Drew's fractured psyche, all while staying true to the tone and pacing of a high-stakes soap opera arc. General Hospital continues to be engulfed in tragedy. Willow's final act of courage sends shockwaves through the hospital, and as Drew's mind shatters beyond recognition, the lines between guilt, grief, and justice are forever blurred. The hall outside the surgical unit had gone still, too still. Jason Morgan stood in the center of the corridor, arms stiff at his sides, eyes trained on the small red light glowing above operating room 2. The doors had been shut for nearly an hour. Inside, the trauma team was trying to save Willow. Jason hadn't spoken since he arrived, only paced silently back and forth when security told him what happened. Drew had snapped, and Willow was critically injured. It didn't seem real, not to Jason, not even to the hospital staff who had seen their share of horror. Michael arrived next, breathless, voice raw. "Where is she?" he demanded, grabbing at Jason's arm like a drowning man. "Where's Willow?" Jason said nothing. He couldn't. His mind was too full, too heavy. He hadn't been there. He should have been. Monica was already inside, called in to oversee the emergency surgery. Liz sat on the bench, her neck wrapped in gauze, blood caked into her sleeves, knees shaking so hard she could barely stand. Her lips moved in silence, maybe prayers, maybe just broken thoughts. "It should have been me," she whispered again and again. "It should have been me." Michael fell beside her, gripping her arms. "What happened? Liz, what the hell happened?" Liz blinked, unable to respond. Her eyes were glazed with trauma. She could still feel Willow's body hitting hers, still hear the snap of bones, still see the bright red blooming across Willow's blouse. "It was Drew," she finally said. But it wasn't him. He wasn't in control. Michael's face twisted with fury. "Where is he now?" No one answered. 2 floors below, in a secured psychiatric holding room, Drew Kane sat in a pair of restraints, wrists bound to the chair, eyes blank. He hadn't spoken since they brought him in. He hadn't fought the sedation. He hadn't even blinked when they read him his rights. Anna Devane stood behind the observation glass, watching him. Her expression was unreadable. "This wasn't just a break," she said quietly. "He's gone, fragmented completely. There's no structure to his thoughts. No grasp on what's real." Finn stood beside her, arms crossed. "Any word from the WSB about what might have triggered this?" Anna shook her head. "He wasn't under surveillance anymore. They cleared him for reintegration after he passed psych evaluations last year. Maybe they were wrong. Or maybe this was a time bomb, waiting for the right moment." Finn swallowed, hard. "Willow?" "They're still trying," Anna replied. "But from what I heard, she took the full impact." They both turned back toward the window. Inside, Drew slowly turned his head to look at them. His eyes locked onto Anna's through the glass. And for the briefest second, he smiled. It wasn't enough. Hours passed. Blood was pumped in, compressions made, every tool in the surgical arsenal used. But the damage was too catastrophic. The blunt force trauma had shattered Willow's ribs, ruptured internal organs, and cracked her spine. They had fought harder than they ever had, for Willow, for Michael, for Wiley. But in the end, it wasn't enough. When Monica finally stepped out of the OR, her face said it all. Michael crumbled. "No," he breathed. "No, no, no." Jason caught him before he hit the floor. "She kept whispering your name," Monica said, her voice cracking. "Even when she was unconscious. She kept trying to hold on." Jason held Michael against him as the younger man shook with sobs that tore from somewhere deep in his chest. Liz sobbed silently in her seat. Even hardened nurses turned away, wiping their eyes. Willow Tate was gone. The days that followed were soaked in grief. Port Charles mourned quietly at first, the way people do when something awful is too new to comprehend. But as the details emerged, sorrow turned to outrage. How could Drew Kane, a father, a Navy SEAL, a man trusted by so many, be responsible for such a thing? How could no one have seen it coming? How could Willow be dead? The media pounced. The Quartermaines were besieged by press. Wiley was kept out of school for safety. The hospital instituted new protocols for staff wellness checks. And behind every closed door, one question kept echoing. What now? Michael refused to leave Willow's side, even in death. He stayed beside her body until the funeral home came. Then he sat outside the chapel all night, refusing sleep, his eyes red-rimmed, haunted. Jason found him the next morning, silent, staring out at the gray light bleeding over the city skyline. She saved Liz, Michael whispered. She didn't even hesitate. Just threw herself between them. Jason nodded. She always put others first. Michael looked down at his hands. I don't even know what I said to her last. I was so angry. I thought there'd be more time. There's never enough time, Jason said quietly. You only think there will be. Michael looked up, eyes hollow. He killed her. He wasn't Drew, Jason replied. Not anymore. Michael stood, face hardening. That's not enough. He needs to pay. Whatever's left in that mind of his, I want it gone. Jason's jaw clenched. He had been asking himself the same thing. What punishment fits when the killer no longer knows they killed? Inside his holding room, Drew started talking again. But it wasn't coherent. He spoke in fragments. Memories that weren't his. Names that no one had heard before. He talked about wires, about voices in walls, about shadows that followed him. Sometimes he called out for Scout. Sometimes he called out for Franco. Sometimes he wept Willow's name. There were moments when clarity flickered through, terrifying, beautiful, and fleeting. He'd ask where he was. What day it was. What he had done. And then it would vanish again, buried beneath the static of a broken mind. Liz visited once. She wasn't sure why. He didn't recognize her. He stared at her like she was a stranger. But just as she turned to leave, he whispered something that made her blood run cold. I didn't want to hurt her, he said. She was the only light in the room. Liz fled the building before she broke down. The funeral was held 3 days later. It rained, of course. Port Charles came out in full, doctors, nurses, the Quartermains, the Corinthos family. Even Carly stood by Michael's side as he delivered a eulogy with trembling hands, voice breaking more than once. Jason stood near the back, unable to force himself closer. He remembered Willow as she had been with Scout, gentle, warm. Kind in a way so few people allowed themselves to be. Liz spoke next. She died saving my life, she said, voice strong despite the tremble. But she saved more than just me. She saved a piece of this world that would have broken beyond repair if she hadn't stepped in. That's who Willow was. She healed. She gave. She loved. Wiley sat on Carly's lap, confused, asking where Mommy went. No one had an answer. In the aftermath, Drew was declared mentally unfit to stand trial. He was transferred to a high-security psychiatric facility upstate. Anna personally oversaw his transport, her face unreadable the entire way. Jason didn't go. He stood by the lake that morning, remembering a different time. Remembering Drew before the fracture, before the storm. They had been enemies once. Then brothers. Then something more complicated. Now, strangers. Jason knew the man he once called family was gone. The thing wearing his face now was a ghost, hollowed out by trauma no one had fully understood. Maybe they never would. And as much as Jason wanted vengeance, for Willow, for Michael, he also knew that vengeance had no place left to go. There was no Drew left to punish. Back at the hospital, Liz stood in the stairwell where it had all happened. The blood had been scrubbed away. The walls repainted. But the air still carried the weight. She placed a single white lily on the floor, then whispered. I'll carry this forever, Willow. I'll carry you forever.